Hey there, commercial construction coffee talk fans. Thanks for chiming in. My name's David Corson. I'm your host. I'm also the publisher and editor of Commercial Construction and Renovation magazine. This is what it used to look like when we were printing it. We're digital now. I grabbed an archive. Oh, you know what? This was the last issue I printed back in April of 2021 when we went 100% digital. We still have a print on demand service, but I didn't know I grabbed this one. This was August of 2021. Uh, Mike Gunn, Vice President of Operations, White Castle. This was the largest restaurant that they ever built. And they make these little hamburgers and they're square and they got the little onions. So I'm sure everybody out there knows it. It's White Castle, it's Crystal, it's one of those at 2 o'clock in the morning. We've all been there, but they're really, really good. But this was the biggest facility he's ever built. So we appreciate the scoop. Anyway, I don't see him print anymore. So this one was 148 pages. And see what I was doing. I was actually at Graceland looking at sites for our summer retreat, and I hadn't been there in like 15, 20 years. It used to just be a souvenir shop in Elvis's plane and the mansion, which is a little house basically. But now they've built an amphitheater. They have all these buildings, and it was amazing. And this picture, this was like all of his gold and platinum albums. That thing went up like 3 stories. We got our group picture by that when we took the tour, but it was great. We had great weather. Beale Street, best barbecue, really good weekend. But looking through here, you know what? I don't miss the printer. I don't miss the post office. I just miss holding it in my hands. But other than that, we're digital. Uh, Thank you for everybody out there that's found us on the web. Never in my wildest dreams would I ever think that I used to be a print face-to-face event guy, and now I'm basically a digital guy, offering content. And it's been an amazing transformation from print to digital. And there's 8 billion on the planet, 8 billion people on the planet. And for those of you who find us on the Wild Wild Web, thank you so much. You're gold in my eyes, and couldn't have done it without you. And we really appreciate it. So, uh, real quick, I'm still out here on the porch. I self-built the house with my wife. She's an interior designer, residential contractor, and we took 14 months. I've been up at the house now for about almost 4 months, but it's still beautiful out. And I've got my studio upstairs, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna sit out here until it gets a little colder, and then I'll go inside. So today I have a nice young lady. Her name is Michelle Collins, and she's like on the cutting edge of this digital journey that we're all going on. And she's out of the Big Apple. Michelle, say hello to our listeners out there, Commercial Construction Coffee Talk.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah. Hey, welcome to the show. And Michelle and I had a conversation a couple of weeks back. I said, "Hey, let's get you on there. This is really, really cool." And she's like, she takes projects and helps coordinate them. So. Or takes leadership of them, and they could be, a mixed reuse or something that's, like an icon that they're kind of rebranding. And she just keeps the old school and brings in the new school. Would that be the best way I could describe you, Michelle? If
Um, yeah, I think I've earned a reputation for being able to respect heritage of a brand, and really understanding how to bring innovation at the culture zeitgeist of its time.
Sure, sure. So the way we're going to work, we're going to do it in 3 parts. You'll tell your story, and then we'll go in, and then we'll finish up. So with that, hey, the floor is yours. Rock and roll. Let's hear it.
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me.
Oh,
I think it's really it's an honest point of view of it's a little tricky to describe me. I've always been a bit of a unicorn. I created a non-agency specifically because I didn't like the idea of being boxed in. And as I think David was trying to explain, I'm not exactly an agency. That was an old model that over 9.5 years ago, I saw the writing on the wall. So where I started was that I grew up in Tokyo as a teenager. So culture, technology, music, fashion, all of that was definitely something that I was deeply immersed in. That was a very different point of view, I think, than what was happening here in the US. And then, of course, like every good person does who wants to rebel, you pick a party school. So, so I went to college in San Diego. So as
oh,
right, Aztec, right. You have to go to Tijuana and you have to go to Vegas, not to mention Catalina Island if you're going to experience life. So fast forward, what I discovered after I had my first real job and landed in New York City, that literally it was that moment I realized I needed to get myself back to a city. And I love New York City and I've lived here ever since. The thing that I brought to the table with my journalism degree and my sales, PR, marketing background is that I understood storytelling. Ever since I was very young, I was very fascinated in the different ways that we would tell stories. That also meant that I was very cognizant about time and place. So back then, I would say to you that, and I'm going to give my age away, but I will say to you that digital was still TV monitors. They were calling those, the digital evolution. And I had found my way into a world where in the retail side of the world, they were starting to develop the cool mobile applications. Remember the world where everybody was developing an app for that?
Oh
And
yeah.
then there were 22 apps, but nothing really spoke to one another and it didn't really deliver meaning. Well, at that time, on a very separate track, budding, trying to figure out my consultancy, and I still feel like I'm a consultancy, I'm just different type. I had the fortune of a few very interesting people that I met at the intersections of my life. So one of them was a gentleman who owned a IT consulting practice for the financial services industry. So while all my friends were doing the cool projects for the advertising world, which I was not a part of, I was learning to market and recruit from some of the world's brightest minds who built some of the first electronic trading systems, algorithms, things that, as you fast forward to today, you can see where that kind of understanding of building systems, how they talk to physical systems, and this is the fun part. Very early example where technology systems driven by customer interactions really shaped what we call user interface and user experience design. Can you take a guess, David, what that was?
I don't know. I'm thinking a big box store, Amazon. I'm going down the list,
ATM machines.
oh, ATM, yeah, yeah, banks,
Right?
financial. Well,
Okay.
I was going to get close to. I was going to
Yeah,
say
yeah, sure,
financial.
sure you are. Well, so
Anything's got money is in the top three.
Well, listen, it really struck me that what the financial services tech guys were doing were so far advanced, but they were really early in understanding how the tech on the back end was going to be influenced by the interaction on the front end. So the ATM machine is a really small example, but that is one of the first early stages of how screen systems and the customer interaction were kind of a beta and a pilot for if you think about how that has expanded into the footprint of what we see in retail. Well, back then, I was talking to the brightest minds and the most talented senior individuals that were creating those types of trading system algorithms data. On the other side, I was being asked to consult for some of these smaller agencies that didn't understand digital, right? They didn't understand mobile applications. They certainly didn't understand how do mobile applications and screens talk to one another. And then I moved on the other side of it, which is visual store design, merchandising. And that was a whole different world. True story. I'm at the Monkey Bar. I overhear a gentleman kind of talking about wanting to invest in this company, but it didn't have any digital. I lean over, of course, and tell him, don't do it. They'll be obsolete in 2 years. Do not invest in a company that doesn't have digital. And remember, this was so long ago. And he asked me, he goes, well, what do you mean? I said, well, um, you know, you're looking at your phone right now, right? It's touch screen, et cetera, et cetera. It's the earliest model of that. But you have to understand that that is the next frontier in physical spaces. And so we got into a little bit more. Anyway, I convinced him that he should hire me and I should help him make sure that his investment was worthwhile. So we did. And I trained this team of salespeople how to speak digital. The trade-off was that I would build these digital prototypes because they had never done it, and you can't sell something to a client that you've never built. So that
Mhm.
was really fun. It gave me time to build things that I saw as the future. And it just happened to be their clients were all the best clients in fashion design retail. So the Richemonts of the world, the Sephoras of the world. So my landscape of digital was creating some of these. Okay, so David, you and I talked about this. One of my first big accomplishments was when Diesel jeans, when Diesel was the brand, and they had that beautiful flagship store on Fifth Avenue. There was a video wall that was a really cool 9 screen, different types of screen configuration that was also one of the first examples, true story, of Samsung screen technology with Microsoft mini computers attached that we had to hack and figure out how to program this advertising content into these different size screens with different brightnesses and different resolution. And then on top of that, the challenge was they designed it for this sexy advertising campaign with music. Well, guess what? There's no music in Windows on a Madison, on the Fifth
Yeah.
Avenue. There's a sound ordinance. So those were the kind of the challenges that in the early days, most people didn't know how to get around, didn't think about, weren't prepared for. And that's where I found my forte. I was the nerd that liked to build systems, talk to the data people, understood, liked to hook the cables in, and would literally get on the ground and get everything designed and set up so that conceptual married to the technology person kind of in my back brain, coupled with the person who could execute anything that I conceived. So that was the first iteration, and it was copied by several different brands thereafter. But what it taught me was there was something about this new frontier of using the windows digitally to bring people into the store. And then what was happening on the backside was that there was this whole world of .com was starting to take over, and there was a concern in the retail storefront of how to get people back into the stores, right?
Yeah.
So then what do you think happened? Gaming, right?
Yeah.
Make the windows interactive. Do you remember that beautiful moment when all the windows were doing really cool interactive things to get you to the windows and then inside the stores? Then omni-channel, right? That became the whole conversation for everyone. Omni-channel. Well, so I can honestly say that I fell into it, not because I intentionally went after it. I'd always had a passion for technology and fashion and storytelling, but I kind of was always at the right place at the right time and wasn't afraid to get my hands dirty, literally get my hands dirty.
Hmm.
And then the world started to bring all the world together, right? So we had advertising companies, we had PR companies, and then we had these like event companies, right? And then we had the really smart, kind of cool kids. We were over here. We were doing like digital stuff. We were doing kind of breakthrough things. And now everyone uses one catchphrase. It's called experiential, right? Experiential is how we now catchphrase all of that, but it really stemmed from early days, the digital and the physical world married together, and the most innovative of us, we were actually creating ways to strategy to get consumers back into the storefront, capture data, and then also do something really super cool, which is change environments, whether artistically, like kinetic sculptures, or video content visuals reacting to human form, or having beautiful, really fun, interactive holiday windows. Okay, so that's just to say that's where I started. That's how it's evolved. And then when I realized that there was a need to do something very important for the business, which was when I had worked on the agency side, when I'd worked on brand side, the thing that I was really not satisfied was that I could see that there was just an awful lot of political red tape and time and waste. Meaning, if you have 22 people who get their hands involved, but none of them are the experts, right? It's inevitable that mistakes are going to be made and the client's not going to be very happy, right? On the flip side, there were a lot of talent, and I don't think the talent was very happy either. So you had this moment at time. My aha moment was I had been going through something very personal, and I was kind of at this point where I did not want to be, anyone else's right hand. And what I remember thinking is that everything I learned from my financial services client in technology and securities and capital markets, you could find a subject matter expert, right? Let's say it's not really a general contractor, but a subject matter expert.
Hmm.
If you hire that person, they actually are also enabled to build the team and scale that vertical, and then they're held accountable, and they can be accountable for millions. Well, in the advertising industry, it was unheard of, right? Because they held the keys. The free M&Ms and the snack rooms and the big masthead, that mattered more than the quality of the work. So I went on a limb and suggested that there was a world where brands and clients would want to work with the actual experts. And it was rare to find people who could conceive and execute as well as produce and manage and scale. So I created a non-agency over 9 years ago. I'm proud to say that the model worked. We ended up supporting other agencies as well, winning some of their first. So you've seen some of it way back when in the shopping malls. I was working with a team that was kind of a boutique retail innovations group. We designed, implemented that first ever shoppable barricade for Kate Spade, which was the first time in a mall they'd ever monetized wood barricades, right?
Yeah,
So,
sure.
yeah, there was that was like, whoa. And then the second one was pretty significant in that Lancome, when they were trying to move their heritage brand to the millennials and they were going to drop these very prolific millennial products. How were they going to speak that language? So I struck a deal. I struck a deal with a small events company and they didn't do digital. So I
There you go.
suggested,
Hmm.
yeah, said, listen, if I pitch and you win, then I actually produce the work. So we were pitching against some of the biggest ones like Wasserman, all those guys. And my concept and my pitch won the business for these guys. So we ended up building the first ever facial recognition gesture screen technology traveling pop-up that went to 3 different cities. And that was, oh my gosh, 9 years ago. So you can see how far ahead of the
Hmm.
curve we were. And then, fast forward, there were a lot of really great clients. I've worked for Richemont Group. I've worked directly for Van Cleef and Arpels. I've worked for some of the most beautiful, successful brands. And then at the top of 2020, technically 2019, um, I was lucky and fortunate and worked hard to deliver the first experience for Delta Airlines at the Consumer Electronics Show. So that meant that we were actually in charge of the live keynote broadcast show for Ed Bastian. So the custom music score, the beautiful sweeping opening visuals, calling the show, and then likewise building a 5,400 square foot color evolving changing space that would feel intimate at Consumer Electronics Show. So you can imagine how challenging that
Oh yeah.
was. Yeah.
No, CES, man. I mean, that's a big gig. I mean, that's a big gig.
Yeah, but okay, so it's like, how did you, people ask me, like, all right, so you went from being kind of a marketing person, strategy, consulting, then it's like, oh, now you're doing digital video walls and cool digital applications. And then now you're building physical structures and spaces. Yeah,
With a
so
journalism degree, how about that? Yay.
yeah, with the journalism degree, exactly. Um, but David, because you're an editor, you understand this. Oftentimes, the failure of many in my world is that they don't listen to what the client actually, what the story really is, right? And they also miss the mark when you're building a space for people. You need to build the space for the people. And oftentimes they build things because they think it's cool and they don't actually think about what the customer consumer journey experience really looks and feels like. Let me simplify it for you. Why do we women always go to restaurants and very rarely is there a hook, just a hook available for our very expensive $1,000 purses, right? Is it really that hard to figure out? Or
Hmm.
yet again, Why is it we go to places where the plates are so big they can barely fit on the table,
Yeah.
right? Like we're here to eat food, but it doesn't fit. So there's a little bit of that long tail journey to 2020. Now we're in 2025.
Yeah. Uh, I had a political science and economics major, but I was really a hockey lacrosse player. That's what my major was. That's what I went to do. But my family was in construction. We were in demolition since 1888. So I grew up in construction. I still have my erector set. I built a lot of stuff. Uh, and listen, I'm a builder. I used to build this with paper, ink, content. Now I just build it digitally, and uh, so much easier. But I went to prep school. I read all the great ones: Lord of the Flies, Catcher in the Rye, Othello. I can go down the list. I read them all. Five paragraph essay, whatever. I learned the more you. Anyway, my teacher laughs at me when I tell him I'm an editor. He was my lacrosse coach. He's like, Coach Brennan. He's like, Corson, I cannot believe you have the title of editor. You were the worst at English. I go, I know, it's crazy, but yeah, I am. I read everything. So it's everything that goes in here. I proof, I read, I look at. We all do. We look at it hundreds of times before we even post it. And then there's always going to be some sort of typo or something that pops out of you. Oh, God, none of us got that. Oh, but the beauty of digital is you can go back and change it like that.
That's true. And then the other thing that I love about digital is that it doesn't have to be stagnant, right? Because that just kind of dovetailing back, one of the first things that I loved about what we were doing in the early stages of what you call experiential was personalizing the experience wasn't because it was just strategy. It was because you could. You didn't have to serve up the same content. You could make a room change color and even temperature based on the person. You could propose different types of really beautiful experiences, but again, going back to why would you do that? It's an aesthetic choice you make based on a strategic approach to something, but it also comes from, I say, the first thing, which is you have to care enough. So there's sympathy and empathy. So journalism and storytelling, in many ways, taught me number one, if you're going to say something, it needs to have an impact, right? Okay. So in designing an experience, it better have a real impact. It needs to have it needs to emotionally resonate, right? That was absolutely at the core of what you're taught. You need to be able to also engage the actual reader, right? Or your subject matter. So if you think about how you devise strategy in our world, that's one of the most critical things. Okay, now let's think superficially. Lighting. Okay. One of my favorite things about what I do that I also have earned a reputation for is I have a very distinct sensitivity to color and lighting. And I think honestly, it comes from being in front of the camera, trying to get a broadcast journalism degree, being very sensitive to skin tone, to how ambient lighting would make the subject matter feel and look. And if it was just a little too harsh, a little too bright, a little too cool, all those things, you could see that the person would become uncomfortable. And the
Right.
minute somebody's uncomfortable, right, they're not going to tell you, you're not going to get the real juicy stuff. You're not going to get the heart of the story because they're so busy being distracted by, I'm not very comfortable. And it's very applicable. So really the world's converged in the most beautiful way that I think. And then, I don't know, where were you in 2020? When
I
it was
was
all
I was right here in Atlanta. I had where was I? I still had my trophy house. I was in there for 17 years, and uh, where I was in Milwaukee, the second week of I had my 10th anniversary summit in Jacksonville. Had the most people I ever had. Kick-ass event. I was the eventer. I do everything. I publish the magazine, I do the podcast, I put on my events, I pick the hotel, I arrange the menus, I did everything. I mean, I was everything. And I was in Milwaukee and I forget who got the bug, but then everything got shut down. But I
sure.
had a digital magazine forever. And I kind of ignored it. I just had it there, but I was posting. I was posting and doing stuff before blogging was even a word. So I had it. And I just had it for, hey, if you want to look at it, it's up on the web. We post up there too. It's got some news up there or whatever. And but so when 2020 came, uh I was fighting with my printer because I didn't want to send out thousands of copies of magazines because half my circulation was furloughed. I mean, that's the reality of it, in the middle of when everything
Sure.
happened. And I'm like, half these things are gonna get thrown in the trash and they're not gonna get delivered. And he's like, David, economies of scale, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm on a small little run. So I said, you know what, my bent, I'll print it and send it out there. And then I sat back. And then my editor, and my artist, they were like, "Look, we got so many pages of content on the web. Let's just go. Well, let's just go digital, and we'll do a small press run." And I did that for about a year. And these magazines, these are on heavy paper. I mean, they call it a digital printer. When I was on web, doing web press, they weren't on the heavy paper. When I was doing like 20,000 copies, these are beautiful. I mean, and look, they got the plot factor. They're all over a pound. So I didn't know. I was scared to death. And to be honest with you, and print face-to-face guy going into digital. So what I did was, after I went, I took 2023 as a sabbatical, and I met these two dudes they were on the web, made millions and millions of dollars. But the most important thing was they were well before. They were coders. They were well before like MySpace and all that social media stuff. I mean, shoot, when I started my publishing career, it was like in the early 90s, and email was just coming into play. I think my first computer was a compact Presario. And man, was it freaking slow. And I remember when Mac came out with their first computer in the early 80s. I was at the University of Denver playing hockey lacrosse, and we're playing ping pong on it, whatever, but I got a really good story. You'll like this as a kind of color consultant. So there's such a difference between today's people that are young coming into retail or hotel or construction than there is of the old school. So my parents were upholstery furniture. We had a showroom in New York. Uh, Levitt's Furniture used to go. I did my retail training at Levitt's after I got out of school at DU, and I was in customer service, visual merchandising, a loading dock. I scotch guarded. I put more of those little brass freaking tables together, those lost leaders, and we'd stick them in the back. I ran the outlet. I did everything I needed to do. And then when it came time for me to leave and go work for my family down in Hickory, North Carolina, where there was like one hotel and a restaurant where the factory was in the mid 80s, when the interest rates were 18%, and it was basically a recession. And furniture was like down three or four probably on the list of what people were going to do. But so when I look at it all, just like you were journalism major, and now you're building stuff. Maybe it's for the Windows or digital, but digital is the coolest thing ever. Because I always tell people, and I talk to agencies every day. They send me press releases, and I just ask them, "Hey, do you do this? Do you do this? Any of this stuff?" And because if you just do content, you're going to miss out. There's just technology is at warp speed, and
Yes.
everything you learn today in like maybe 3 months, you won't and like you won't even recognize what rest. Yeah, sure, they'll have tables, maybe food, but I think it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
You're a color. My wife's a color consultant, so I get the thing of lighting. My parents were jewelers on that side, so I understood about the four C's. But lighting was so important. If you wanted to sell a high piece of jewelry or a Rolex watch or Mickey Moto pearls, you had to have the right lighting. Lighting, just like buying fruit in the
It's
grocery store,
it's
right?
interesting. Well, it's true. There's nothing easy about that industry, but and the first live show event that I was ever thrown into. Again, never went looking for these things. I just got called because I had just enough technology, AV, strategy, creative, and I got called to, in 2 months, take on a Super Bowl fan experience. It was one of the first of its time for Wasserman. Wasserman had not built their experiential division yet. And that was the first time that I'd taken on something so massive. And it was insane. I mean, crazy kinds of schedules because the people that were supposed to be the experts, and this is also what fueled my thinking, they didn't actually know what they were doing. They were talking about Calvin Harris in a Chinese restaurant, and I was like, we're going to do what? We can't even get the video walls through any of these doors. Oh, we'll just lift them up from the ground through the windows.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, what about the power? We're going to knock out the whole complex because we don't have the right kind of power. Anyway, when we ended up at the pier for the actual experience, it's a raw, empty space. To this day, one of my partners in crime, which is what a non-agency is built on, which is finding other unicorns like me who are small, nimble, and run scale businesses. He is a lighting expert. And he was very accustomed to doing, concerts, etc. And this was a little bit different for him, but he took it on and he taught me the kind of the cardinal rules. I understood projection mapping and all that because of everything else I had done. And I was also a nerd and I loved that. And true story, I would find the AV shops and ask the owners if I could just take them to lunch to pick their brain. That's how I learned audio visual, was because I knew what I didn't know and I wanted to be artful. So I'd take the owners to lunch. And then they taught me all the talent came from Broadway, right? These were the people that you needed to know from anybody who worked in that side of the world. So on the flip side, I had this genius of just a rock star. And he explained to me something that to this day I use, which is most people don't have proper scale or floor plans or measurements. So how are you supposed to design everything? That's what everybody gets stuck up, right? They get stuck in, we don't have plans. I don't know. Well, there's a grid system. It's a very simple grid system, and he uses it in that world for lighting grid systems. So it's a 5 by 5 grid system, right? That's easy, right? 5 feet by 5 feet. You can
Hmm.
calculate. You can make an assumption by human space what 5 by 5 looks and feels like. So he taught me to do lighting using that. He taught me the rules of never moving things around after you set the lighting. He taught me temperature. He taught me things that I would never have learned. Well, in that same exercise, that system, that grid that he created for lighting, I translated that into human space scale. And oftentimes it has been how, for example, when we did Delta, there was no floor plan. They didn't even know what size booth they were going to have. And there were 52 people thinking about different ideas. And I was able to use that as a way to show people in real time, you cannot have 22 chairs in this space.
Oh,
Something as
yeah.
simple, right? But I was able to design floor plans and get them to a place where the customer experience, the consumer experience was pretty close to real until we could get the 3D scale in. So, um, lighting, it it started as like my first best friend in the industry. It became the way that I leveraged technical spatial design when everybody else was still asking, where are the floor plans? Where are the floor plans? And it's interesting because I asked you where you were in 2020 because we had just finished CES. We were lucky because we could see that there were
No,
people going.
I listen, as a trade show producer, I had mine, always had mine. I always wanted to be the first ones out before trade show season started, but like at the end of January all the way into June, and then summer's, and then it picks up in September. But I had mine, and I saw all these events. These my competitors. I'm just a little independent publisher. These guys, and I watch every one of them either cancel it or try to push it back, and then they try to push it back again, and then they reschedule it. And some of them never came back.
Yeah, 100%. So I would say that what we walked out of 2020 is that the world shut down. Our industry completely shut down.
Totally.
So everyone was on Zoom calls and talking about the thing that, and I shared this with our mutual friend Anthony Maldonado, which was if I had to be on another Zoom call with retail experts talking about the same stuff they were talking about 10 years ago, I actually said in one of them, I solved that problem 10 years ago. We created interactive windows and games. Like, that's not the solution. That is not where we're going to be coming out of this. Nothing will ever be the same. Like, what people understood as, okay, well, there'll be interactive gamification. I'm like, no, 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 it's going to be so different that I couldn't even get my head wrapped around it. And I'm somebody who is a digital native. But what I did remember thinking out loud is people are never going to see space and have a relationship with space in the same way ever again. Poignantly, the number one asset you can have is that you own hard asset and you have a physical space. Now, the tricky part is, I'm going to be candid, most of the people that can own and develop those spaces do not think about the customer, the evolution of society and culture, and they leave it to their tenants who they want, right? And tenants will figure that out. That's not our job. We just zone it, we build the infrastructure, we make tons of money, here's the property. Then they deal with, okay, we have low tenancy, what's the problem, right? We can do okay. So then second tier is at the brands, the tenants, small businesses that want to take these spaces. You've given them kind of a shallow, empty white box. Back in the days, that's what everybody wanted. Even in the event space and experiential, you wanted a white box. Well, everything changed during the pandemic. So the first thing I thought was like, I don't want a white box. I want good bones, which means there are plenty of underutilized spaces there's a ton of investment in the furniture, the amenities, and they're not being utilized or optimized appropriately. So for someone in my world, also for the consumer, that's an advantage if we can identify the right partner. So I don't know if it was bold or if it was foolish, still trying to figure it out, but I decided that while everybody else was sitting on the sidelines, that this was, the rule 101. You're an entrepreneur. If you want to be successful, innovation doesn't happen, all that good stuff. So I made the bold call to pitch IHG,
Oh, downtown.
IHG
Mhm.
Hinton.
Yeah.
And of course, there was nobody doing anything. So it was kind of like they were picking up the phone. And my proposal and my pitch was this, is that I saw space as the number one commodity and value proposition. I saw the hotel as having so much prime real estate that was not being monetized or utilized appropriately. And that I could envision a world where I could take a destination and create an amenity and a destination within their property. So, literally taking over the hotel for 4 to 5 days and taking on the role of programming the whole hotel, facilitating relationships with national, global designers who understood that they could not scale their .com business without a physical, real store, but couldn't afford to do that, and especially not in the climate of the pandemic. So what does that look like? You take over a hotel for 4 days. Prime example, Palm Springs. We activated the Palm Springs Kimpton, which is the only one that has a pool on the rooftop, tallest building. We launched a drone show because that's what one does, right? Because, we need digital art. First time a hotel has had a drone show. So we launched it with the drone show. We activated the whole property. Well, in my mind, I had this long idea of what it was going to look and feel like and how it could be licensed by different hotels. And sadly, I realized that they didn't care. And I realized the truth was, the audience that I needed to get to, that needed to hear me, to needed to say, like, I'm gonna roll the dice, is I needed to get in front of the developers. I needed to find a developer who was innovative and young enough and saw that the next generation was not going to be interested in strip malls. That
Oh,
was,
no, yeah.
yeah.
The other night, I was in a retail store. Listen, when I used to go on the road, I would look at and she go, "Hey, let's go shop." I'm like, "Babe, I don't want to go and look at stores. I look at them all day long." Anyway, I'm in this furniture store, and I hate my family made awesome furniture. The stuff they get in the store, it's all junk. I'm sorry to say that. All right, it's just is. You could have one of our sofas. It would last 50 years. I mean, you might have to get it reupholstered, but the frame itself, it's not going to break. Anyway, we went in there, and I think the girl was helping us. She was like 23. My wife had gone in there a couple times, and she knew I was just going in to look, and So we were talking retail. I'm like, hey, how come you chose retail? Oh, retail's exciting. It's vibrant. She was all excited. And I was like, hey, I worked in a furniture store for about a year. Levitt's Furniture. Ever hear of it? No, no. I go, well, they were big back in the day. And anyway, but I'm 62. She's 23. There's her life is completely different than when
Mhm.
I was 23. And I told my wife on the way home, I'm like, I just said, that girl doesn't know jack that what I did when I was in the store, that she has so much, and it was it was great. But she had a little digital tablet and all that was cool. And the big box, it wasn't white. They had done a nice job on, but it was a regional furniture place. Anyway, my wife knows them all. And but I just walked out of there going, like my son. He was completely different. He's 26. He doesn't even know what a magazine was, you know?
No, right.
Oh,
Well,
he's
okay,
looking
so
on his watch. He's going to look on his tablet. He's gonna, whatever. It's just,
let's fast forward. It's right now, like I've always kind of leaned towards we're going to be device agnostic soon. Um, and it's not really practical for us to have to hold multiple devices. So my communication strategist at one time, I had one. She asked me, she said, Michelle, well, what do you see as the future if you could just, I'm like, well, let's George Jetson this because
yeah, George
this
Jetson.
yeah, I said, this is the world I see. Number one, I'm not going to need to hold any devices. Those things are going to be advanced wearables or embedded, which means the environment itself is also going to be outfitted with receptors that are going to detect micro gestures. And so, mind my words, David, you're going to be like, this girl said this. Oh my God, she said this. Micro gestures, being
No,
able
no, no, no. I'm totally
to.
there with you. I'm telling you, I had a client one day on the same subject. He's like, David, man, you're going to be able to, from a project manager construction point of view, you're going to be able to have everything there. You might wear glasses, but it's just going to be all there. Someone could come in. It
And it's not going to be goggle driven. It's not
No,
going
no, no, none of that virtual.
to be virtual
It's going
reality.
to be, it's
Exactly.
kind of like a heads-up display in the military. They have it's all there. Everything they need to know. Gas pressure, how many weapons I have left. Everything's there. It's in his helmet, but it's all there. And
It's 1000%. So the environments are going to change. The trick is, and I remember talking about this a decade ago. It is about embedded soft technology. The most advanced design will look and feel seamless. All of the technology will be embedded inside of the kind of the fabrication. It will also be very thoughtful in terms of how it connects to all of our wearable biometrics so that this is actually in my mind where I started with the hotels, this like bringing brands, what I call a showroom experience. I didn't call it a pop-up. I called it a hospitality retail showroom. And now if you look at everything that is being designed now, they're all hospitality showroom third spaces. So 5 years ago, when I was knocking on everybody's door saying, guys, stop talking about all this stuff. This is what we're supposed to be doing. I kind of got the like, that's really cute idea, right? The world's going to go back to the way it was and everything else. Well, that that exercise of investing in that, spending the time doing that, it taught me a lot about how the small to mid-sized businesses operate, all the things that I hadn't touched. Because I'd always been the experience design strategy, experience design implementer. And this was the first time where I had to kind of like run a pop-up with retailers and online fulfillment, all those kinds of things. Okay, well, third spaces, right? Predicted it 5 years ago. All right. I had talked about gesture technology over a decade ago being very important. And I kid you not, when I did the Lancome project, the chief marketing officer used to scream that she didn't understand how to use the mirror and that she didn't understand why I didn't suggest touch screens. So, well, first, makeup on your finger, not so great to touch a mirror, right?
yeah,
Right. And the second thing is you asked me for fast forward 10 years. And back then, nobody was talking about gesture. They were talking about touch screen. Right. So there's that world. Now, what recently happened, which is also a little bit different, but again, bringing all of the worlds together. So cool project. All right, cool project. Didn't know that it was going to be a cool project. Lalique. Lalique is one of the world's most prestigious crystal, right? As you know it. But actually, the House of Lalique was originally a jeweler.
Yeah, we carry baccarat and
Oh yeah,
some of
sorry
this
to put
porcelain stuff. I know some of this porcelain stuff. My stepdad, he had 13 stores, and
Yeah,
he had his original store. And when he got married to my mom, it was like any retailer. You have to grow more stores if you want to stay in business. It's just the reality of it. And so he sold them and kept the one store. And that's when I came in. I got GIA certified. We built another store because we were worried about this. A lot of his clients were high-lying dudes, but they were getting older. They were starting to pass away or die off.
right. Aging out, right.
And people were scared to come in there because they're like, "Ooh, Weber Jewelers, you can't go in there. They sell Rolex in there or something." So
Right.
so we built this like cool little, I don't know, same time store, but across the street in the new Citizens. This is downtown Dayton. And anyway, we made it cool and put some tunes in there. And anyway, but we wanted a different crowd because we knew the other one was disappearing. But there were
Uh,
all these other people that were kind of just scared. We got to change that. So I get it.
that's exactly right. So ultra luxury is number one. It's very telling, right? On one hand, everybody wants to work for luxury. For those of us that have had luxury clients, we know that they are very demanding, rightfully so. It's not necessarily about the money. God, those of us who know it's that they have no forgiveness in terms of the quality is the first and foremost rule of thumb. The second rule of thumb is that their business model is based on hospitality, right? They don't sell to their clients, they host their clients. They don't call them customers, they are clients, right? So, working in that world really trains your brain differently. So, when I got the call, this is probably the biggest challenge. I thought Delta was going to be like the biggest challenge I ever had, right? Design it in 3 months, do what nobody else could do, right? Then I get the call to help Lalique. So Rene Lalique is one of the world's foremost influential Art Deco, right? Jeweler first. What you know as Lalique vases and crystal came after, but the Lalique ecosystem is massive. They fragrances, they own vineyards, they own hospitality destination resorts with double star Michelin restaurants.
And they're
It's
all intertwined.
it's massive.
Hmm.
So their problem, which in the United States in particular, is that the generation here is not as astute to the global heritage and culture. So yes, aging out, their clientele, and you've seen in the construction of the new Tiffany's, the new Van Cleeves, what I always say is you can tell the journey by what I call the 80-20 rule, right? Which is, did they redesign that store so 80% looks and feels and speaks to the next generation, or is it 20%, right? How much of it is new, shiny, and new? Well, Tiffany's new, shiny, next generation, 80% big screens, the whole thing, right? 20% the soft luxury, right? So you can see where the brand is in that journey. Well, Lalique took over the beautiful historic townhouse that is on the Upper East Side, and it's
That
really
was
cool.
beautiful. The pictures you sent me were really, really cool. They were
Thank
beautiful.
you.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean the townhouse and because you're in this business, anytime you have a historic
Yeah, you
townhouse,
got to get the historical architect. You got to get to, there's probably a preservation society.
all
If you
yeah,
knew
all
a
kinds of
brick
things.
or, oh
That's
yeah,
right. All kinds of things you just cannot do.
yeah.
Then you've got matches. You have a heritage legacy brand that isn't just a prestige brand. We're talking about the foremost, influence of Art Deco, as you know it. So interior design to everything to jewelry. Um, our our challenge and the team's ingenuity was after several traditional agencies and award-winning designers were not able to complete the project, they asked us because we had that unique experiential backbone And because we also knew how to design furniture, design lighting, design spaces, but also understood the like how do we bring people through the story? That was the insight that made sense to them. They partnered us with a traditional, very talented interior design studio, interior decorator, who they purposely knew we were going to be the yin and the yang. I'm much more contemporary, right? You can see by the background. And they have definitely a much more elevated, I think, refined, traditional approach. And when you bring those two worlds together, it can be a tug and a pull, but it ended up delivering, I think, a beautiful experience. But the strategy, which is what I'm really good at, is I told the story. So going back full circle, I interviewed my brand client. I assessed all of the stories that I had to be able to tell in the singular experience, understanding that people's attention spans are very short. Also the strategy of the business, etc. And then every part of the beautiful townhouse has its own microcosm of a story. So when you look to the right, when you look up and you look down, how did we bring that to life? And then did we give you enough physical space and the right lighting so that you would be receptive and open to hearing the story or being interviewed at that point, right? Interviewed by the sales associates. So I think full stop, which is I didn't know that I would have the opportunity to help design, this transition destination, which will become a model for others with the whole team of Lali Global and Local. I couldn't have told you that's what I was going to do when I was like over there working for IT tech company or doing a video wall in Diesel. I wouldn't have known any of those things.
All
But
right.
but I
So,
think that um I mean where you sit, I mean you must speak to I don't know, thousands and thousands of builders and designers.
you know what? It's like I said, my family's been in construction since 1888. So I kind of have that everything that I've done though, whether it was putting together those little brass tables or I was out in the shoveling asbestos before we knocked the building down, or all the retail training I did and my sales background, and I just look at everything, especially my I'll tell you, being an athlete, you learn how to win and lose. You got a thick skin. You think getting whacked by a 6'4", 240 pound D pole on a D1 team, yeah, it hurts. But I'll tell you, man, business is a lot more vicious, and you better have thick skin. And it's just, but you got to have fun while you do it. You're going to get some bumps and bruises along the way, but you know, hey, listen.
Yeah.
If you're out there in commercial construction coffee talk and you're looking for like cutting edge, I mean, my mom worked for a hologram company back in the 70s. So I understood about all this kind of stuff that's now, coming into, but I saw the original stuff that was,
Yeah,
just so low tech, but they were thinking about it, you
that's
know?
right.
And but I'll tell you the coolest thing I ever did as a projector. We had a West Coast event. We did it at the Long Beach Convention Center, I think that for the third year. And the Queen Mary was there, and they had this like big ball. So we got this guy. So I think I traded it out with the guys. Anyway, they gave me this lens that you put on a big outdoor projector, and they put it up on. They put my logo of the show up. It was really cool. It was cutting edge, I thought at the time. Everybody was like, "That's the coolest thing I've seen in a show ever." I'm like, "I know." It was like maybe the baby sphere. I don't know, but it was cool
Right.
the way we did it. But listen, if someone was out there, Michelle, and they wanted to talk about, experience, branding, tying it all together, how would someone reach out to you? Yeah.
Uh, Email me at my first name initial, M for Michelle. My last name, Collins. No, I'm not Irish American, although my adopted family is Irish American.
There
I'm
you go.
sure you looked at me and said, this is not Michelle Collins, but M Collins at, and this is also a stumper, but it's pretty straightforward, a non-agency.com.
There you go. So what I'll do is I'll put this. I'll edit when I do my editing. I'll put all this in. And I'll put it in the description too. And if there's anything else in there that you want to put in there for sure. But look, if you're out there in commercial construction coffee talk land, we just talked about a lot of really cool projects. Building. You got to do stuff. I just built this house in 14 months. I never built a ground up before. My wife had done plenty of basements, bathrooms, kitchens, but we never did ground up. But we just went and did it. But there were certain things, and you learn along the way, and now and I like I said,
Hey, here's the last pitch.
yeah, go
Why
ahead.
you should contact me. Um, if you built something that is supposed to be intended for people, consumers, and brands, and you don't ask someone like me to help you design that before you invest in that, you're basically throwing money away. At the
Yeah.
end of the day, I always say it's the long end of it, right? It's not, don't ask us to come in when you've already spent all the money and now we have to rebuild it, re-engineer it, redesign it for you. Have us help you actually create something that will scale, that will appeal 10 years, 20 years from now. So that's it.
No, hey,
Having me.
I'm on the same page. I just I have another call here late in the afternoon about some other software that it's just gonna it's I'm telling you it's the most amazing time to be alive. Still gonna have to do 2x4s and drywall and lights and install. I mean, but it is really amazing when you think about what's happening. So, but I'll put all Michelle's information in there. So Michelle, before we go. Uh, is there a positive thought or phrase you want to leave with us as we finish up 2025 and go into 2026?
Oh my God, positive phrase. Yeah, big,
Go
bigger,
big. Yeah.
big,
Yeah.
bigger. Yeah, that's it.
Hey, I'm all about think big, man. If you don't think big, listen, why would you want to sell something for 10, 100, or 1,000? You can sell 10, 100, $1 million items. You still have to work the same. That's just the way I think. I don't know, but think big.
Don't
Couple
be
of things. Couple of things before we finish up. Number one, if you're on the construction site, all right, I want you to be safe. I want you to get home, be able to have dinner with your kids, your spouse, your pets, get some REM sleep, and go do it again the following day. Number two, stay liquefied, put some powder in there for the electrolytes or whatever. If you don't stay liquefied, you get dehydrated, and that's the athlete meme. You get dehydrated, you make a bad pass, you miss the open net, you lose the game. Hey, if you get dehydrated on the job site, hey, oh, I got some stitches. What? I'm telling you, stay liquefied. I know the summer's gone, but it's all every day. Doesn't matter if it's winter or summer. Stay liquefied. You'll have a better day on the site. You'll have a better day when you get home, sleep, and the following day. Last but not least, hit the like button so we can find this algorithm out there on the web and hear Michelle's story. So, Michelle, pleasure. Uh, yeah, I'm going to listen. I know who she is. If I do any other projects, I might. I'm probably going to make that call. It never hurts to have a conversation. Am I right?
I agree. Always open to the conversation. Thank you, David.
All right, Michelle. Listen, say goodbye from Manhattan.
Goodbye from downtown Manhattan.
And I'm going to say goodbye from Lake Lanier, about 40 miles north of downtown ATL, the LA of the South. And listen, everybody, you got about 2 weeks left. Halloween, that's the start of the holiday season, as far as I'm concerned. Then you got Thanksgiving, and then it's going to be December, Hanukkah, Christmas, whatever, and then it's over. But you want to finish strong with momentum, and then go into 2026 with momentum. So, with that, Michelle, if I come up to New York, I'm going to look you up. All right.
Please do.
No, we'll look at some projects, and everybody have a great week, and we will see you next time on another episode of Commercial Construction Coffee Talk. Michelle, awesome. Thoroughly
Thank
enjoyed the
you.
conversation.
Me too.
All right, cheers.